So you're probably asking yourself how a handsome devil like me ended up in a place like this with you, right? All right. I'll tell you the whole story, but I warn you, it ain't pretty. May seem hard to believe, but these chiseled good looks have seen a whole lot of ugly. So I guess I'd have to start with the book. Legend has it that it was written by the Dark Ones. Necronomicon Ex Mortis, roughly translated, the Book of the Dead. About 20-some-odd years ago, Professor Noby unearthed the book at Castle Kandar and accidentally unleashed the Deadites in the woods outside Dearborn. That's when I got involved. To make a long story short, I was sent to hell and back, and then back again. And again. But enough about that. Let's talk some more about me. Like, for example, how did I end up here? Well, I guess you could say it all started with a woman. A woman in that godforsaken book.
Welcome back, everyone, to an honest review where we try to stay objective about the topic we're talking about. Today we are talking about Evil Dead, Fistful of Boomstick. I am Stefan JD, and here with me is
Jesse Chavez. Ahoy, hoy. How's it going?
And we are going to be talking about this game that I played way back in the day, and I had very positive feelings about it, even though it's not particularly a AAA good game. We kind of dissect it here and just kind of give an honest opinion about it. What did you think when you first started this, Chava?
Are we talking about like the very first time I played it, or when I started playing it for today's episode?
First impression.
My very first impression when I jumped into it like years ago was, wow, this is kind of fun. You know, it's got that classic Bruce Campbell banter to it. When I returned to it years like in the present and really got a chance to sit down and play it from beginning to end, it kind of wore on me a bit. It was just like the charm, the Evil Dead charm and Bruce Campbell's charm was kind of worn really thin. I really wanted to like this game, or I really wanted to love this game, I should say, but there's a lot about it that I feel kind of either just didn't age well or fell flat. Like I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not it's just, was the design always kind of bad, or was it just something that's kind of like a trope of early PS2 games?
Yeah, I think the biggest component for me was that, well, let's set it up a little bit. You're in a town called Dearborn. It is basically like a free roaming type of gameplay, but there's very little to do, obviously, because this is, very cheaply made. And you can tell that because there are the big three different settings in the game that all take place in Dearborn, but through different spits of time. And you can tell that they kind of they kept the same layout almost, but they would like copy paste different type of housing to, set up the time period, and characters would swap clothes. And that's basically the big gameplay of this game, is just going through Dearborn through three different time settings.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of put it in perspective, because I watched other reviews after I completed my first like actual full playthrough of the game, and someone in one of the comment sections brought up, was like, keep in mind this game was $30 when it came out, at a time when PS2 games were still like 50 or 60 upon release. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, budget title, got it. Well, yeah, and see, that speaks to even the new Evil Dead game coming out here in a couple of weeks, which is a multiplayer, kind of like Friday the 13th or Dead by Daylight type of game. But that's coming out for $40 instead of $60, so it's still following the same trend, you could say. Yeah, although I think that one gets away with it because it's more of a multiplayer battle type game as opposed to like an actual game with a plot and an arc and like a full. I don't know. I feel like the production value changes from a multiplayer experience versus a game with like an actual plot. You know?
Yeah, 100%, because you don't really have like NPCs that you have to interact with, or objective markers, really. It's more running around in combat and then like interacting with one or two things. Yeah, but this one, so like just to like put it in perspective, because like the beginning of this game it really doesn't like throw you directly into the fray, because the biggest thing that, like, to me, the biggest detriment is the fact that enemies can cheaply hit you. Like games of this period, and especially like when you'd have multiple enemies surrounding you, you could fight one and the other ones would wait their turn, almost like in a movie, like they just stand in the background and wait till the protagonist starts fighting with them. But in the case of this game, they didn't want to do that, or they felt it made it too easy, maybe. And they just will hit you no matter what, even if there's 30 of them surrounding you.
Now here's the thing, because the game, it gives you a huge armory of weapons and chainsaw attachments and alternate attachments to the chainsaw arm. And there's even like chainsaw attacks where like Ash, like I saw in the demo that they always play when you start the game up instead of like waiting for like the screen to idle, where like he can like swish the chainsaw around and like swipe all around him. Mm-hmm. I was never able to do that in the game. I tried. It's possible, like, as the reviews touched on it, but even they're like, yeah, it's actually kind of hard to pull off. And I'm like, why? Why couldn't that be something? They wasted all this time like putting in these fucking button prompts for spells, which, by the way, I only used maybe 4 times throughout the entire game, because you don't get a chance to actually like use them. When an enemy's approaching, they run so fast and in such a group, and they can interrupt you and stun lock you while you're trying to do these spells. The spell book is pointless.
Yeah, I mean, it helped me out of a couple jams, and we'll get into that. But the basic combat is just being surrounded by deadites constantly. Like, you are constantly on the run. If you're not running in this game, you're dying. So you always have to be running, and it's that kind of sort of like the provocation of threats, through sprinting around the town that like gets your blood pumping. So I guess in a way it does like kind of work, but at the same time it gets annoying because you never have a chance to sit and enjoy the town or the people or the atmosphere even. And you're always constantly fighting. And one of the things that I think they tried to do to like help with the combat, and I talked to you about this, Chavo, was if you're chainsawing in front of you, you can use the lock-on in an enemy in back of you, and Ash will use his complementary over-the-shoulder shooting behind him without looking, which happens in Army of Darkness. And so like you can hit the enemies behind you, but the combat just doesn't feel like it serves that purpose,
Well, what we have here is a mishmash of different game designs that don't complement each other, because, okay, like the level design, it's bad. It's like barren, empty, like you're running around on these streets. Everything's like nondescript. There's street signs, but again, fuck you if you try to actually stop and read them, because you will be mobbed by enemies. Mm-hmm. Like it is so easy to get lost, and it feels like a cheap ploy to just kind of pad out the game. Like, well, they can't beat it in a ridiculously short amount of time if they're like constantly lost, right? Except it's more like frustration. There's not enough in the environment to keep you going. Whereas, like, if they really wanted to go for like Ash versus an army of deadites, which is also a valid take, the level design kind of needed to complement that more, where it's less exploration, because it's either you focus heavy on the combat or you focus on the exploration. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too here, and it just doesn't work.
Like, I actually enjoyed going around the town, and like certain like little cues, like the TV station or the church or the park, would like kind of let me know where I was at, like what sort of vicinity. So like I wasn't 100% lost, but at the same time, I didn't pick up any maps. Did you pick up a map?
There is no maps. Well, let me rephrase. There's no maps that Ash can carry. There is one blurry ass map you're supposed to look at in the museum to kind of like figure out where to blow up wall pieces so you can like retrieve key items that you need. But outside of that, no. And a map option would have helped so much. Unless, I don't know, there's a few items I never got to use in the game. Like I had two pieces of parchment that looked like they formed a map, but there's no combine option, so I couldn't get those to like set or trigger. I had those 2 vases, which in hindsight, I'm wondering if maybe I was supposed to set at like the museum founder's portrait, maybe.
Oh yeah, you were. I think there was a secret behind there for ammo or something.
Oh, not that would have lasted long. Like every time you get ahead in this fucking game, like ammo and supply wise, you end up getting lost and running circles and circles and circles, and then the Deadites show up and like fucking chip you down to nothing. I will say one of the other things that gave me perspective on this. So when I was playing the game, it crashed, right? I think it was when I was in Civil War Dearborn. And like it took me, that was an hour of progress lost. And then once I went back to the level, restarted from a save point, the time it took me to get the chunk of game it took me to get like an hour to get through, once I knew where to go, it took me like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This game is short. I think like the average time to beating it is about 3.5 hours. I certainly felt that the time had gone by fast when I realized that because like your first main mission, you're supposed to basically go to the museum, follow this dude through time, and that's the whole objective, is basically to get your way into the museum and kill this dude. And that's halfway through the game after you do that. And that was, an hour and a half. So, it's a short ass game. And that's why I think like the town being so open, which again, like kudos for them for trying at least, even though it is like barren, like you said. I don't know. It's just a mix. Like even the missions seem to be going from like point A to point B. Like you can't get through here without a badge. So you have to go down to this like dead end road of
so many fucking fetch quests. Oh my god.
To go like kill a specific deadite that will give you a badge that you can go and then with the police officer be like, hey officer, here's my badge. Which it's kind of funny because the only thing that Ash starts with, other than his weapons, is a S-Mart ID card, and you actually do use it in the game at one point. Which
in Civil War Dearborn to identify himself, and I'm like, no one's gonna be like, hey, how the fuck do you have a color photo?
Yeah, it is of its time in terms of PS2 era gameplay because a lot of those games were fetch questy. But the things I do appreciate it though for are the fact that it does kind of set a mood sometimes when Deadites would surround you and Ash would break out a one-liner and then you'd get into battle with them. Like little things like that.
He utilizes the ad-lib system that's very similar to Resident Evil Outbreak, where you push a button and he'll comment on. I wish he would comment more on like the actual like current immediate events and like surroundings, as opposed to just generically insulting Deadites, because that seemed to be all I can get. Hey, ugly, blah, blah, blah. So what's wrong with your face? And I'm just like, okay, that's cool. Is that all you got? All right, never mind then.
Yeah, it's very clear that on the whatever budget they had, it was like, okay, we got Bruce Campbell for like a day. What do we want him to say?
He was enthusiastic about the project because I watched the little featurette that they included on the game, and like they were all really excited. Oh, and side note, by the way, this game is actually a direct sequel to Evil Dead: Hail to the King. That was what that bus crash reference was at the beginning, because his girlfriend from the end of that game died because, anyone who's in a relationship with him is doomed.
Yeah. And well, I had talked to Chavo about playing Hail to the King one day just because it is so fucking abysmal. But I don't know if that's going to be in the current future, because that's a real time sink to try and like lay out and figure out how the fuck to like accomplish that game, because it is so bad. I've tried it a couple times just on the beginning portion, couldn't figure it out.
If I didn't have the patience for this game, something tells me I'm definitely not going to have it for that one.
Yeah, I think we'd be better off going with Regeneration. But how did you feel about like when you finally got out of Dearborn into the museum? It's kind of a little bit more quieter in terms of Deadites and like a little bit more linear and structured, wouldn't you say?
I'd say, yeah, that was probably level design wise. That was my favorite area, just because I wasn't like, it still has a bit of a labyrinth quality to it, but at the same time, there's more distinguishing landmarks. I can be like, okay, so this area that looks like Colonial Dearborn, cool. This area that's a science exhibit, okay, Egyptian exhibit. I know where to go. I know where I am, or I know where places I've checked that I need to check deeper next time.
Right.
It's just being stuck in like a wave of like just generic street suburban hell, and like trying to figure out, it's like, okay, well, where do I go? Okay, that's the hardware store. No, that's not the hardware store. That's another hardware store that reuses the same sign. Fuck, why are there so many hardware stores in Dearborn?
Yeah, Dearborn, Michigan.
I just and it's not that there's aspects to the story I liked about this game, even though the plot is admittedly paper thin. I think I liked Ash running into his ancestors. I thought that was pretty cool. And I liked that, for Civil War Dearborn, you had to actually unite the Confederates and the Union soldiers to fight against the Deadites. I thought that was a very Army of Darkness moment. This game is obviously, like, I'm sure the developers behind it were all just really hardcore Army of Darkness fans.
Yeah.
It's just that's I think the movie that they pull from the most with this, which is good, but I've always been more of an Evil Dead 2 boy myself.
Yeah, Evil Dead 2, same. And even the first one, because they're kind of the same movie.
Yeah, they complement each other.
But it's like the plot, even to just to really quickly explain it, is that the well-endowed journalist, talk show journalist, is...
I'm going to get started on that one in a minute. Sorry, continue.
The redhead, by the way, is interviewing this old-timey dude named Eldridge, and he and her play the tape from Professor Noby's cabin, and it's reading from the Necronomicon, and it sets everything loose, and Ash is in a bar when this happens, and then he realizes he's like basically called upon again to go out, protect Dearborn, and stop it from happening. And then we get to just to jump through it real quickly, we learn that they are trying to summon a specific being, and you kind of take that out, and then Eldridge gets like power hungry, so you have to chase him through time, through 2 different periods of time, including the Civil War, like Chavo said, and you have to kill him. And then for some reason, and that's the part where the paper thin comes, because it doesn't even explain her motivations. The redheaded journalist, talk show host, Trish, suddenly becomes evil and like rules the world of future Dearborn when you get back to reality.
See, that's how fucking non-important her character is for most of the game. You couldn't even remember her goddamn name.
Yeah.
Fucking Tits McGee. All right, first off, I'm going to start gameplay wise. So that boss fight, which is the final one of the game, by the way, so fucking anticlimactic. Like all the boss fights, honestly, with the exception of maybe Nathaniel Payne, which I had my issues with, but fucking, like, I'm just like, she's hanging from the ceiling, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then I see a stick of dynamite, and she keeps like doing these long yawn like roars, and I'm like, no, they couldn't. And I fucking chuck a stick of dynamite. Bitch ends up, deep throating it and then like exploding on the inside. And I was like, oh, so I just have to do the whole throw the ball in the clown mouth bit. Okay. 4 more sticks of dynamite later. Boom. Game over. And I was like, really? That was the final boss fight, what we were building up to, a fight that doesn't utilize any of the weapons that you picked up, any of the abilities, and any of the spells. They give them all these toys, and they don't give them enough reasons to use them.
Yeah, and even the ones they do give you, like some of them you don't suspect you need to use a boss fight, like the museum boss fight. You have to use the shovel to knock back these balls of fire that he throws at you, and you're just like, really, the shovel?
I died. Okay, so I'm gonna give a little preface for this. Stefan still fucking laughs at this.
Yeah.
So I got mauled by a herd of deadites like right before the boss fight because I didn't know like I was walking into one, and I was down to basically one hit would kill me, and my save was like right when the boss fight starts. So I had to do that boss fight quite a few times, and I'm just shooting at Nathaniel Payne over and over, trying to damage him, and I'm like, why the fuck aren't my guns doing anything? Until I break down, and yeah, I looked up a walkthrough for the boss fight because I'm like, fuck it, my time is precious, and I cannot dedicate the rest of my time before work trying to figure this fight out. And I learned that I had to use the goddamn shovel, and I was like, are you serious? Really? Not even Ash couldn't fucking ad-lib something. I like batter up, just anything.
It's weird because like just the way the boss is set up, and like it's a center stage boss where you go around it like a concentric circle, around his damage zone. Yeah, even the final boss with Trish, and here's the thing with me, like in terms of like how I survive, because this is important to actually talk about. In terms of how I survived, I would run from every Deadite I ever saw until I got to a point where like 30 were chasing me. Then I would slowly try to hack them off to about 5, and then I would rinse repeat. Chavo would try to fight more, and like that's not a bad thing either, but it's very hard, again, either way, to just fight that many Deadites. So when you're doing that right before the Nathaniel boss, I just ran all the way. I ran past every Deadite right to the boss room. So I had full health. In terms of his case, obviously, he stopped to fight Deadites.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna add context to this. It's not that I don't want to run necessarily. It's that the game kind of forces you to fight after a while because your supplies are down to nothing, and sometimes if you want to get that little bit of health or maybe a box of ammo, you have to fucking kill them.
That's true.
And oh my god, I'm gonna ask you, does it make character sense? Like when you think of an Evil Dead game, Ash should be able to fight better, right? Like fight more, not just run away all the time.
It's weird because like yes, but also no. Like he should be getting his ass handed to him all the time because he does in the movies. He always gets beat up, and that's why even sadly Bruce Campbell said like he can't continue playing Ash because he can't go through the physical pain anymore. But I think he should get beat up, and maybe that was like the idea going into like Deadites being able to strike you at any time, even when you're in the heat of battle. So yes and no, I would say. But I think you did. I still think you did the right thing because you always probably had way more ammo than I did. I was always like running on bare minimum. Even there's points where I didn't have any, and I would get lucky. And the game has these hidden caches of ammo, like just in random spots. Like you'll get bolt cutters, and when you go through time, there's this barn that has a lock on it, and if you don't know to go up to it and use the bolt cutters, like it's just nondescript. It's just there. Then you won't get that extra like 100 bullets, shotgun bullets or whatever.
Or going to use the vases in the museum on the Nathaniel Payne painting.
Yes, which I got lucky that I even went in there.
If I would have thought of Code Veronica, I would have probably figured it out. Like, rich people always put vases in front of paintings like these. Maybe, it works.
Resident Evil.
Dead. I really would like to know what the fuck those pieces of parchment I got in the game would have actually done. I have a feeling I was supposed to give them to somebody because I accidentally figured out what to do with the cheap tin ring because there's a dude who gives you a silver ring, and I was like, I wonder if he'll take this tin one, and he did. And I was like, oh, cool, bonus ammo, great.
Oh yeah, okay, and yeah, and then speaking of parchments, because they do add to your spell book, and as you were saying earlier, Chavo, which we didn't get to, the spell book you do have gives you a number of special abilities. Like you'll turn into this huge hulking Ash where you can like take enemies out real fast, which I use here and there invariably. And then what were the stupidest fucking one, the most pointless goddamn one out of all of them, was you can summon a hellhound. And my rationale going into that, my thinking was, I'll summon the hellhound, the Deadites will go after it and take some heat off of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be able to like dick around more. Like I won't feel like I'm under attack all the time. So I summon it. 2 deadites go over to it and knock it right out, and it's dead. It's like, well, what was the point?
They're the weakest enemy in the game. I'm pretty sure they're all immediate one-hit kills.
Yeah. So it's like, what was the point of that? It made no sense whatsoever.
They wanted to be able to say, hey, Ash can summon the Hellhounds, because it sounds cool, right? Like, it sounds like it's badass, and then it's like, oh, it's not.
And oh man, I forget the other ones. There's lightning, which was kind of okay. It didn't really kill everything in the surrounding area. I feel
that was the one that saved my ass a couple times from some hordes.
That one did help. I feel like the one that helped the most was when you rain down fire.
That one was okay, although I only used it a couple times, and by that point, see, that's the other thing. I feel like a lot of the times when this more useful shit pops up, it's already so late into the game, it's pointless. Like this would have been great yesterday. This would have been great back in Colonial Dearborn. Why didn't I have it then? Why am I? A new game plus, I'm sure, would be fucking fantastic. Just going through and annihilating everything with a Gatling gun, courtesy of Ash's great. I forget how many greats. Grandfather.
Yeah, and it's funny too because it's just basically like a duplicate Ash, which harbors back to what you were saying about Army of Darkness, them being big fans of it, because that's what it feels like. Ash is talking to another Ash.
Yes, who is not voiced by Bruce Campbell, who's doing a weird Bostonian accent.
I wonder. I wouldn't be surprised to find out if it was Ted Raimi or something. I didn't look that up, but
I didn't see his name in the credits. Although honestly, that would have probably been better.
Oh yeah, they should have did that. God damn it. The biggest detriments to this game, I want to say, because I just really want to like pinpoint what is bad about this game, because it's, in my eyes, it's a good bad game, and I think the biggest detriments are the deadites can get cheap shots on you. If they took that out of the game, it would be so much better. So much better. Even the fetch questing I don't mind too much because it's Ash. It's not like he's going to do like big feats of, heroism. He's just going to do dumb shit. Like, it almost runs into what everything the character is about, in my opinion. Plus it's the era of PS2, so
I'd say just make him more capable of evolving, and like in every Evil Dead movie where he starts out kind of dumb and weak and kind of has to rebuild himself into a fucking killing machine, because yes, he gets his ass handed to him in those movies quite a bit, but there's always his Ash gets the chainsaw moment. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think Sam Raimi or somebody, maybe it was Ted, somebody said like Ash has there's 4 characters that make up Ash. There's the hero, there's the jokester, the coward, and then like the guy in between who's like just had enough of the shit or something, or the naive guy who's just like, I can do this, but he really can't.
Right.
Yeah. But I feel like that the overwhelming amounts of deadites, the fact that you have to close so many fucking portals in this game with silver, that got old really fast. And you have to do it in every time period.
I do feel like the frequency kind of goes down a little bit, although it kind of resurges again in Civil War. But then by the time we reach Evil Dearborn, it's like not a thing.
Evil Dearborn, I would say that's one of the hardest parts of the game, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's literally like, it's like, what if the Deadites ruled Earth? It's like Doom 2 Hell on Earth or something. Like, everything's just whacked out and demolished and under Deadite control, and they have like humans in jail, and Trish is underneath the church for some reason.
I still would really, really like to know how the fuck that, like, I was confused. I was like, is she possessed by a Deadite, and the Deadite is assumed like a queen, for like she's like the physical manifestation of the queen, or did she just get power hungry while we were out saving the worlds?
Does she get possessed?
Yeah, we literally get nothing. Like nothing. Like the last time we see her, Ash gives her a big old smooch and then leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he chases after Fuckface, and he leaves her.
Eldridge.
He leaves her behind. I think in Civil War, Dearborn.
He
Or no.
leaves her behind in the museum, and then they travel from. They go into time once. I forget what war is the first one, and then they go through time again to the Civil War after that.
Right.
So there's two different time periods, but they're both war torn, I think. But you eventually come back to the future, back to the future, or the present, more like it, and then that's when you find out that Dearborn has been taken over by the Deadites. But yeah, again, it doesn't give you any information on why she got power hungry or anything.
Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous. It feels a bit insulting just coming after like something like Evil Dead 2, where we actually did get like a fairly competent female character. I miss that. I don't. She doesn't come off as very bright, you know. She's just kind of a walking pair of tits, and I hate saying that. Like I was kind of like, okay, well, she dresses kind of skanky, but maybe they'll give her a sense of humor, like a foil to bounce off of with Ash. They don't really interact that much. They don't really have much banter outside of her saying suggestive things and Ash making sometimes appallingly crude jokes at her, and I'm like, oh. So this is the tone we're going for. Okay, boys.
Yeah, I think he openly tells her to go down on him at some point.
I'm a lonely man, Trish, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, Bruce, really?
It's a different time.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I feel like, again, at least in the movies, like, he does have that, yeah, you want me action, but he never just flat out says, hey, suck my dick.
Yeah, he'll say, something like, give me some sugar, baby.
Yeah, like a little mystique, or however you want to, a little nuance there, not just, I'm very lonely and my right hand is or my primary jacking off hand is gone, so I need some help.
Yeah, I need some help. But yeah, no, I think looking back on this, a little bit of my love for it has gone down, because I do have, like I said, I had fond memories of this as a kid, actually as a teenager, but like I had all the time in the world to play it.
I was gonna ask, if that is the big thing that kind of changes the context, because I've had times where I revisit games where I spent like a good chunk, like a month of summer, just playing it and exploring every nook and cranny and loving it, and then as an adult with responsibilities and a full-time job, and I'm just like, I really don't have the time to pour into this anymore, and I really don't want to.
I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest component to why you could end up loving this game, is if you have literally nothing else in your life going on, and you're staying at mom and dad's or whatever it is, where you have free time, you could probably get some enjoyment out of this game. I still did. I still like it. I still think it's a good, bad game, but it is a bad game.
It's like the video game equivalent of a hangover cure.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Cold pizza and warm beer. There you go.
And I don't hate it. And again, it's better than Hail to the King on PS1, which is just a broken mess. The third game, the one that comes after this, Regeneration, is the best one out of the series, I would say, in my opinion. And I still had good memories of that one as well, but I really wanted Chavo to go through this one with me, because I feel like this one is the one that actually has some difficulty. Like the other one you just breeze through. Regeneration is so easy. It's almost boring even.
You son of a bitch, you knew. You knew the entire time. You didn't even warn me.
Well, honestly, I didn't remember it being this hard. So, that's the thing. But
you're lucky we don't record together. I'd be going Sarah Connor on you right now. You son of a bitch!
Yeah, it's all your fault. But yeah, I mean, how would you rate it 1 out of 10 for people, Chava? Also, would you agree on my sentiments? Would you add anything to that?
I feel like your position is pretty fair, and I feel bad. Like I could tell, again, watching the video for this game, the guys who were making it, they cared. They really did want to make a good Evil Dead game. Mm-hmm. Actually, I should rephrase. They really wanted to make a great Army of Darkness game. But I can't in good conscience say that they fully succeeded, and it's a shame because it ended up costing them a third game, which would have rounded out the trilogy, because it has a great setup at the end. Like, it's like the whole thing is framed as Ash telling a story, but we never see who he's telling it to, and then we find out, as always, he fucked up the spell and he ended up in feudal Japan, and then like he ends up having a face off against fucking Shogun Deadites, and I'm like, oh my god, that's the game I want to play. What the fuck? And we never get it. But if I had to rate this game, I'd say a 5 out of 10 stars, 5.5 if I'm feeling exceptionally generous, because there are some moments where like I was like, oh, I'm actually having a good time, and then the game's like, oh, well, we can't have that. Fuck you.
So that's fair too. And the way I've always taken like 5 out of 10 scores, or 5 out of 5 in this case, is like half the game's good, half the game's bad.
Oh, fuck it. Maybe I should say 4 out of 10. No, I'm charitable. 5 out of 10. There's elements there, and there's definitely, I have to say, if I had to pick favorite location, museum, favorite combat aspect, the boomstick. It's honestly your best fucking friend throughout the entire thing, because it's so versatile. He could aim just about anywhere. You could lock on all around you, and that's probably the only reason I finished this game.
Yeah, I want to say that like OG Dearborn, when you first start, in the radio station and all that, and the museum and the parks, like that original Dearborn, like the opening segments of the game were my favorite part. I don't feel like going through time helped the game at all. If anything, it made it more confusing.
I actually liked that. I mean, it's kind of weird because it's like you're getting your Back to the Future and My Evil Dead, but
yeah, it's the Army of Darkness treatment.
Yeah, but I really liked, I feel like the game actually did pick up a bit. Like once we started jumping around, it sucked that every time period, like as soon as I started getting kind of charmed by the new settings, I immediately had that enjoyment squashed, because I was like, oh great, I get to navigate all these fucking loops that go nowhere and dead ends and getting fucking mobbed again, and maybe occasionally running into an NPC if I'm lucky.
Right. I think it was just the maps for me. Like they were too like confusing and they looked the same.
Yeah. That's it's the sameness. That's like, I could handle confusing. I mean, fuck, if I can get through Heisenberg's factory and Resident Evil Village, I can get through just about anything. But when everything looks so similar and it's just reusing assets, it doesn't work to your game's favor, and it's not going to be proper game padding. It's just going to serve to frustrate your players.
Right.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if this game came out like one console generation later, do you think the maps might have fared a bit better? Like if they had more processing power and more time and maybe a better budget?
I think so, yeah. Especially with the like getting out of the PS2 original Xbox era of like the gameplay ideas of that period. These definitely would have been improved upon. Even if it was a cheap ass like improvement, it still would have been better. Because obviously it would have looked better.
Yeah, because as it is right now, it's a barren sandbox game. There's like a few tasks strewn about a very large map with lots of twists and turns that don't go anywhere. There's really not enough meat on the bone for this one to like really, like, I feel like part of like the way a meta game should be with a game like this is you really want to kind of drop tidbits and bits of like story and bits of information that kind of hook the player. Like, okay, I'll keep playing. I'll give a prime example of this. Fucking Deadly Premonition, which I did not care for. Sweary. That'll be for another episode. But through all of his aping and ripping off Twin Peaks, I was intrigued enough where I'm playing and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait and see where he goes different. And he does. He does stray from the Twin Peaks plot here and there in his ripoff. But like, There was just enough mystery and just enough intrigue, and I liked some characters just enough where I'm like, I want to see where this goes. I didn't have just about any of that with this game.
And that's fair because it's just Ash, and aside from his continuous one-liners,
he doesn't have anything to bounce off of.
Yeah, there's nobody there, except for like a few cutscenes thrown about, like before boss fights or after, just like to move the plot along. Like he'll run into Eldridge real quick and he'll go through time, and then it's like, okay, that was like a minute,
Yeah, like have Trish be a supporting character more throughout the game, like showing up and keeping in contact and then bantering and playing around, because then that makes the twist at the end all the more impactful. It's like, oh shit, no, she's not on our team anymore, or oh man, it was all a lie, she's betraying us, something.
What point did she get possessed into a Deadeye? And like they could have even have played with it, like when he went back, like he could have gone back to Dearborn, and then like she like turns around and walks away from him, but her face is a Deadeye, and like he doesn't see it, and then like we as the player know, like, oh no, Ash, don't trust her,
How about that blowjob? Sure thing. Ah!
Honey, you got real ugly. But it's a game for the fans, and I think as Evil Dead fans, in my experience, have never been the brash kind where they yell and scream about how something wasn't exactly how they wanted it, or it wasn't like the old movies or anything. I think Evil Dead fans have. The fan base has always been,
they're really chill.
Like, yeah, very chill, and like we're so grateful we got anything at all that we're just happy we have this. Like that's fun. That's
funny. It's funny you say that, because in the featurette, I'm sorry I keep bringing this up, Bruce Campbell is like, well, we can't really get another Evil Dead right now. The rights are in limbo. So this is like, really, it is the next best thing. Like even he has to admit, like, this is probably the closest we're getting right now to an Evil Dead 4. So enjoy it. And if there's any Evil Dead fans out there whose this game's near and dear to your heart, I apologize. This is probably the only time I'll do this. I do apologize for not enjoying it. Everyone's got their own game that they enjoy for their own thing, and your experiences don't have to mirror mine. Yeah. I can see why people would be for this and why they'd have fond memories of it. I just, looking at it from a very, what was the word you used at the beginning of this? A very objective standpoint. There's so many things where it's like, this would have been so much better if they did this. And I'll give the team credit, because I have a feeling it's just budget and time constraints. I wish the game would have gotten a little more time to cook.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. If they had like another 3 to 4 months, this thing would have been a banger to just go back to.
Another like couple days in the recording booth with Bruce Campbell,
Yeah, and it is because of the Evil Dead fans that we even got a third one, which did improve upon everything of this game. So you do, in terms of quality, get that in the future. I have talked to Chavo about it. We have considered, playing it in the future and covering it. I think that one's worth it, but it's just so contrasting in quality comparison. It's so much better improvement over this one.
I'm hoping to see if it breaks the Evil Dead curse, because the first one I couldn't even get to play on my emulator because it literally kept breaking my emulator down, and I was like, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
Hail to the king.
Yeah, and then side note, like I'm working on a PS2 soft mod right now. I just installed a hard drive on a fat PS2 a friend of mine picked up from the thrift store. And like I've been able to get so many PS2 games loaded on the hard drive and working on this game, except one. Guess what? It was Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick. I had to go through like 3 different programs and re-encrypt the damn thing before I could get it in working condition. Maybe that's part of why I was so fucking harsh about it. I was like, all that work for this?
I can understand that.
But yeah. Maybe that's just the fate's way of saying don't
don't say the words. Don't read from the Book of the Dead. But I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 in terms of good bad game, because I have played some bad games. And
no, I've definitely played worse than this.
Yeah, and this is nowhere near that. I had way more fun, and I am a big Evil Dead fan, so I give it a 7 out of 10. And that's in terms of that game. If I had to compare it to a good game, like on the same par of a AAA game, I'd probably do a 5 out of 10, like Chavo did.
Yeah, if anything, it reignited my love for Evil Dead. Like I binge watched the 3 movies after playing because I guess I kind of needed a palate cleanser. And it's got me really pumped for the new game that's coming out soon. I pre-ordered it and everything. So fingers crossed that one's good.
Yeah, and maybe, after a couple of weeks with it, maybe we'll come back and talk about it on here, because I'm sure we'll have a very well-informed opinion of it after, it's been out for a while and we've kind of battled in it.
Yeah, calling dibs on Ash's sister for my main, just saying right now.
Yeah, speaking of not strong females, I'll probably be a main Kelly, because De Lorenzo, I follow her on Facebook, and she seems like such a good, cool person.
It's gonna be a blast.
So we'll keep you guys informed on that. But for now, that's it for Fistful of Boomstick, baby.
Hail to the king.
All right, bye everyone.
Later.
Has a bit of a problem. And only one man has the power to stop them.
Come on, I got plenty for everyone.
Kiss my boomstick. Ooh, that gotta hurt.
Come on now.
Evil Dead.
Cha-ching.
A fistful of boomstick.
Woo!
I just think it's so cool when the parts go flying like that.
Rated M for mature. THQ.
Hail to the king, baby. Hail to the king. This is just very entertaining. The fact that some cheeseball character from 1979 is running around on, some guy's video shelf in 2003.
What are we gonna do?
We're gonna bury her.
You can't bury Shelley. She's a friend of ours.